Hello, my name is Frankie. I'm the marketing coordinator for CitySeed, and I am here with Nadine Nelson. She is the owner of Global Local Gourmet. She's a chef, a social activist, a cooking instructor, a writer, a social entrepreneur. She's got it going on. And she's really done some awesome work in the food world, both here in New Haven and beyond. And so we just want to sit and talk about her and the things she's accomplished, but also on what is it, Monday, on President's Day, Monday, February 15th, there will be a Stir the Pot event, and Nadine will talk a little more about, the origin of Stir the Pot and that event coming up. But yeah, so here is Nadine. Nadine, do you want to introduce yourself at all?
Sure. I mean, you introduced me a little bit, but
You can tell
I'll
us
just
something
say,
personal. Where are you from?
I knew you were gonna ask that. Everyone asks that. So I'm from Toronto originally. However, I am Jamaican, probably via West Africa, Nigeria, but we're not sure because, um, slavery. And but I moved to New Haven when I was 10. And I lived in Boston for 23 years. I went to Tufts and came back 10 years ago. And so I've been in New Haven ever since. And so, as you said, I've done everything. I've done pretty much everything in food, definitely. But I am a trained educator. So, yeah, we
Great,
can go from
thank
the
you.
conversation from there.
Okay, thank you. Um, let's see. Um, so I'm gonna ask you a couple questions, a little bit about your business, but also then you can, move into talking about Stir the Pot. So my first question is, how did your business get started, and how did you first get started, I guess, in the industry?
Okay, so I went to Tufts University, which is in Boston, Massachusetts. I lived on the Medford Somerville campus. However, I always had a job off campus and, was connected to Boston. And Medford Somerville is like Hamden, New Haven, like so that like kind of closeness. And so um I managed in my junior and senior year a special interest house. I managed the African American house, and so we had a kitchen, and I had control of the kitchen, and I come from a big family, so I always cooked lots of food, and so obviously on campus we would have parties, or for all the people that lived in the house, I would cook meals and people got word of me cooking food and they're like, oh, like we have these special people coming on campus. Why don't you do a reception? So I did that. And so then I started catering and I knew that I didn't want to be a caterer or a restaurateur. I had been a waitress. I had been a bartender. I started bartending. You're too young for this, but at a bar in New Haven in the summertime called One Love. And and then when I was in Boston, I was a waitress at a very popular soul food restaurant called Bob the Chefs, which is like kind of like the equivalent of Sylvia's in Harlem. And I was also a bartender and waitress at a very popular bar in Boston called Wally's. So like I had this really good foundation of like I used to do when I was in college, like cook for like dignitaries and special people that came on campus. And then, but I also waitress and then learned about a whole bunch of like African American cuisine, and I learned how to really bartend really well at Wally's and stuff like that. So, but I realized that I never wanted to be a restaurant chef or restaurateur, and even catering and personal chefing, although I can like that. It's not something I want to do on a regular basis. So um, I went into education. I was a dean for a long time in Boston. And then I always um, would do catering and that kind of stuff, like in the summer times or during my vacations. And then after doing that for around 15 years, I had that itch, and then I did a business plan, and then I realized that I didn't have to be a restaurateur, that I could teach cooking classes, and I can merge like what I went to school for and what I learned with like passion. And so I started easing my way out of education and went to Paris, studied design and art, because I also have an art side of myself, like, you know, traditionally, even though I feel like culinary is arts, but I do other kind of interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, however you want to look at it, types of art and practices. And so I went to Paris and I studied art, and then I also studied pastry. And when I came back from that, I was on a sabbatical from my school. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to do this food thing full time. And then I haven't looked back since.
Nice. And so that's the inception of Global Local Gourmet. That's so cool. And so I guess, and yeah, like your business is totally unique to me. I hadn't heard of anyone doing sort of specifically what you're doing outside of you. Um, but what's unique about your product or the services that you offer?
Well, I would say like I offer interactive culinary education, and other people probably do that too. But I would say that when you come to my one of my events, they're very special and kind of unique. And um, they combine, it's just not a cooking class or an art class. It combines a bunch of different things depending on what the topic is. And but they're always going to be kind of memorable kind of experiences. And that's what I go for. I go for like creating an event that I want to go to, and I have very high standards. And most importantly, like what would my family go to that they would be able to say, you know what, we went to this event last night and this was a really good time. And it was a really good time because we got to really be fun and engage in our five senses. You know, we got to talk to other people and connect with other people in their culture. We got to understand how like we're all interrelated in regard to the environment. So like my events are like multifaceted. They're just not kind of like passive experiences where you come and you might watch me make these pies in the back. If we're going to talk about pies, we're going to talk about like, oh, like what is your favorite pie, and when was your, you know, when was the first time you ate pie, and you had a special memory, you know? So, and then you get to share that with someone else, and those type of experiences are unique, and we don't get to have them very often because even with all the technology that we have, we don't necessarily connect and build community. And since, you know, like we're in the middle of a pandemic, that's something that we cannot change. However, I want to try and recreate the experiences that um, I've done in person, like whether it's like through Stir the Pot or with another class. You know, like I want to be able to still have that sense of intimacy and vulnerability um, online too.
I'm glad you bring that up because now I'm wondering, you know, you were used to running all these great events in person. You know, I've been to a couple Stir the Pots and they were great, and I loved that there were readings and that there were like discussions and the food was always really good. Um, but so how are you adapting your work um, to like the virtual world in light of COVID? And then also, if you want to talk about just, you know, talk a little bit about some of the things you've done so far. And then I think that'll transition us nicely into Stir the Pot. But yeah, you could talk a little bit about um, COVID, how that's affected things, and then, what it has looked like since we've moved to this virtual world.
Yeah, so I would say like, I'm not one of those people, like I'm really more like a one-on-one kind of person. And I think that, my personality is like being a host and trying to create fellowship and um a sense of like co-creation with the people that I'm with. And I really jive off the energy of people in person totally. And however, like we don't know when this, like people are asking for like when is like normal gonna happen, when we're gonna go back to what we had before. And I don't think that we are gonna go back to what we had before. I think it's gonna be very different. And I think that, people are like, well, like we're always online. People don't want to be online. But before COVID, like when were most people not online? Whether you're it's like with your phone, with your computer, like watching a movie, you know, like just so many things that we do on a daily basis is done through wireless and some kind of device. And so we got a grant from the Center for Arts and Activism and to bring Stir the Pot online. And so like we have a website, we're building it out. So if you go there, it's stirthepot.online. We are building it out and we love like to get recommendations and feedback and suggestions of resources and things that you would like to see on the website. But we've done that. And then also we had our first kickoff event during Martin Luther King Day with Peace to Pie. And that was really a wonderful event that has been um, showcased in like today.com and our local media, the independent, which is really great. And so like people can see like, like and hear about the process of what we are trying to do, like but Stir the Pot for those people who haven't been to an in-house or in-person event is based on Feed the Resistance by Julia Turshen. And so it's a book that has like recipes and it promotes activism in each other. And so like Stir the Pot, we read an article and then we usually have a local person talk about what they are doing with their talents, with their passions, perhaps where they work or where they volunteer. And then we end with what can you do with your passions and your talents to create a better world and the place that you want to call community or what you want to envision your neighborhood to be. And so that's how like every Stir the Pot is. And so it's like really great that it can be different. We usually come together at the beginning to cook because like I believe that cooking together and engaging in that experience allows us to break down barriers where like usually when you come to an event people go in their little corners and they don't talk to people that they don't know, and that's not what we want people to be able to come together, cook together, and then listen to a speaker and then talk about like, okay, what can I do? And then be like, oh, you work for CitySeed and CitySeed has been a really wonderful partner in Stir the Pot. Like we started our first series at CitySeed and they have partnered with us all along. And it's really great that we have worked with New Haven area food organizations with hosting, whether it be CitySeed or Common Ground or Yale Farm. Like we want to be able to have people understand about the great work that's going on in New Haven to then either volunteer or let that be motivation to do something else, like be an alder or, be part of New Haven Gather and have your own garden plot or work with the bioregional garden and work together on a garden, or like other people who've come to Stir the Pot, they have worked with Connecticut Mental Health or New Haven Public Schools and their wellness team. So we want to like bring people together around food, but they might want to do something outside of food, but we just want people to be involved in some way. So
Yes.
on February 15th,
Yes, tell
from
us about the
2,
upcoming event.
yeah, so from 2 to 5, we have a bunch of different speakers and organizations to show people how to be able to get involved in different ways. Because a lot of people feel like, like volunteering has to be boring, and volunteering doesn't have to be boring. You can use your talents. Like Stir the Pot happened out of, you know, being kind of frustrated to me, like hearing people complain after 45 became, president. And it's like, what are you going to do with that X? Like we can either, complain or we can do something about it. And so having these meetings and meeting together about giving people some kind of concrete kind of skills in which to be able to be like, there's aldermen that do come to Stir the Pot. So you can find out how can you get involved and be on your community meetings, for example, or how can you be involved and volunteer for the land trust that needs, or New Haven Gather as they're called, like volunteer for gardens that need your help. Like there's lots of things that people can do with the talents that they have. And that is where like Stir the Pot brings people together. And then now, that we're going to be online, we want people, like we want to replicate like what we've done in New Haven, that it has been a success. We've had 2 cycles, and that we want other people to use, Feed the Resistance as a manual. And then when you do your cycle, however you want to do it, then you're able to have regular meetings where people want to get involved around food, but maybe do other things that you decide that you want to tackle in your township, your city, your neighborhood.
Thanks for that. That's so cool. I'm excited to see, um, the way that Stir the Pot grows in this new environment. Um,
I'm excited
I
too.
have,
I said I'm
huh? Say
excited
that again.
too because, like,
Yes, yes.
like before I was like, you're talking about like COVID and, my reaction, and, before, like, I'm not like I feel like but then being online poses like opportunities. You can look at it as like, oh, I can't be around people, which obviously I'm sad about. However, like there's no control over that. And so
Mhm.
being online allows us to have this tape, for instance, and then for you to put it online. And then for people, like it's been amazing as to be the creative in residence for the New Haven Public Library during this time. And, I was so looking forward to like being in their maker space and, their whole veranda over the green, and like being
Yeah.
able to like be in like the space that we have is like a renovated library, for those people who are listening in New Haven. So it's like New Haven Free Public Library. It's down in our public green. It's right there. And I was so looking forward to be able to interact with people, but that's not possible. And so doing all my programming online, and then to see like people, there's like been some tapes that 700 people or more have looked at. That's like a lot of presence and influence, and the ability, like that tape was like, like my former student that does comics, and like every Wednesday I have these programs called Co-Create where I talk to different artists and creatives, and people, like have asked me about like my story, and like I ask people about their artist story or their creative story,
Mhm.
and people are able to get inspiration from those things. And not everyone will be able to come, because even when we're doing live events in the past, like I used to tell people, like why don't people tape most of the events that they have, because so many people
Yeah.
can't come to that live event. Like why would we tape it? And I know that there can be some kind of you have to work it out with different people that you're working with, like to get that kind of,
Yeah.
okay. But if you can, like the way that I've been doing with the library, and how, like these tapes like live online, it's great,
Yeah.
like for people. Cause like like one of my friends like, oh yeah, I saw that, you know, I saw that show that you did with, the guy that does dreams. And I shared that with my sister, and I was like, "You were on there, and then you shared it with your sister."
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Oh, like you don't even know that, you know?" And but that's what is great that some I didn't even
Yep.
know that homegirl was on there, and but she listened to one of my friends and fellow colleagues, James Estrada. He has an organization called Dream Collective, and so he gathers people's dreams and he correlates them, and like it's just so interesting about like manifestation. And so like we have like this 2 hour conversation on my co-create show every Wednesday. And you think that, oh, do people are people, I don't know how many people are ever watching, so there's some
Yeah.
people who assert themselves, but a lot of people don't. And
Yeah.
then, like then my friend said, yeah, I watched that show and I shared it with my sister. And then you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's been really cool to see. I think like it was really surprising um, that COVID showed how much more convenient things can be, and how much more accessible things can be. I think like we were so obsessed with like presence, which I think is important, like physical presence. But I think like there are a lot of people who have a lot of barriers to getting places, or um, maybe don't have the time to fit
Well,
in
it's
that
like,
travel time. And I think like this has been cool to see, like, and you reach people further away too. I think
right.
that's,
And like with the New Haven Food Policy Council, for instance, like when it was like in the thick of COVID, like you had 60 people on there, like
yeah,
where you'd
yeah.
never be able to see that in person. And,
Hmm.
like when I first came, I was like, why can't we just have a conference call, which is like, a very lower version of Zoom,
Yeah.
back in the day. But like why can't we just do that? Because like it's at 8:30. And for those of us who had kids, like we have to get our kids off to
Yep.
school. And when we used to have the New Haven Food Policy meetings, then I have to make special arrangements for my daughter. And I was like, I have that ability to do that, but a lot of people don't. When you're like saying like, why don't more people be involved? It's like they're not involved because they have to think about those type of things. But if you're on Zoom, then you can go downstairs to your, you know, wherever you are and
Yeah.
then watch your meeting or not turn on your video if you don't want to. You can call in if you want to. But
Yeah,
I feel like it does open up a lot of stuff, and even like
absolutely.
to my classes, like the way that I look at it, it's like I don't look at it from the superficial, like, oh, okay, Instagram, like, oh my God. I look at it as like I get to like teach people about I just finished a chocolate class,
Yeah.
and probably a lot of people will watch that class and it's great that I hope that people watch it that next week is school vacation. And I hope that people make chocolates with their kids, like
Yeah.
whether it be like for Valentine's Day, but you just get a bunch of chocolate chips and like melt them in the microwave or on a double boiler, and you can make your own chocolates. And that's what
Yeah.
I want to be able to do. And like it's great that we have Zoom that can tape that, and whoever didn't join today at 4 o'clock, they can catch it and be able to do it later.
Yep. Well, that's you're just doing such great things, and I'll be sure to, post all the info on Stir the Pot just to make sure that it's somewhere that people can read and can go back to. But I think I have just a couple more questions. Um, this is about, you're a Black woman, and I'm just curious, like, you're a Black woman who is doing big things in the food industry. And I want to see if you want to talk about your experience as a Black woman in this industry, um, or maybe about like what it means to you to be a Black entrepreneur. Do you want to speak to sort
I
of
would say
that
like what it means to
experience?
be a Black entrepreneur, because I think that that's like a little bit more hopeful than what does it mean to be like Black in, the food industry per se. So like to be a Black entrepreneur, I think that, you're looking at Madam CJ Walker and, all these other people that, like for me, like B. Smith. I don't know if you know like B. Smith, like, but people compare her to like the Black Martha Stewart. And when I was growing up, she had her own television show, and she was just like, Mrs. Domesticity, and then she had her own, you know, um, series of restaurants and stuff like that. So being a Black entrepreneur, to me, like, leaving, working for an organization, doing like my art, doing my business, means a sense of freedom. I might not have all the money in the world, but I wake up and I love what I do and I like what I do. And I'm like grateful that I get to do what I do. And I think that, like last year I just turned 50, and being that, I couldn't have any kind of huge parties or anything like that, there's a lot of time to be able to think. And, like I just thought about, like, I'm really lucky that for the majority of my working life, I have done things that I enjoy doing for the majority of my time working, and
Yeah.
that is like most people can't say that. And I'm really glad that that has happened. Like, I work with the library, like I just talked with Courtney at CitySeed, and I hope that we can do some more collaborations that I've done like in the past. And, like um COVID has been hard for people in hospitality, but luckily, like I've had a lot of work and I appreciate that. And I want to be able to bring people together in a time where we can't maybe physically come together the way we might want to, but to create like fellowship and a sense of belonging and a sense of connection in this time where people are seeking that.
Absolutely. That that's so great. Ooh, okay. Well, that was fun to hear. Um, let's see. I think those are all my questions for you. Um, yeah, is there anything else that you want to tell people about anything like, coming up other than Stir the Pot that you want people to know about, and be on the lookout for any um, projects that you're working on that you just want to talk about?
So yeah, like in the like I'm a creative in residence at the New Haven Public Library. So you can always
Yeah.
find out on Facebook or on their website, the different programs that I'm doing, because I've like also series. So like I'm in the middle of a series for Meatless Monday, which is like 6 months, and it's the last Monday of the month up until June. And this month, I'm talking about the vegetarian or vegan pantry, plant-based pantry.
Hmm.
Um, I have co-create every Wednesday. I have office hours that people can call me and get, consulting on whatever their, creative ideas are. On Tuesdays from 12 to 2, and they can go on the New Haven Public Library, their website, and Eve Squared, and they can make um, an appointment for me to talk with you. And you can do one appointment, or like I have a regular client, and she was just on today.com, and um I've been working with her in regard to her nonprofit, and each week I give her assignments and stuff like that. So it's like I think that's really amazing that the
Hmm.
New Haven Public Library, like, funds me to be able to do that for free for other people. I love that, and I love
That's so
having,
cool.
yeah, I love like, helping people make their dreams come through, true. And, like a lot of people look at like creatives like, oh, you're not, maybe I'm not the best business person, but, I'm one of those creatives that I am a business person. I don't know if I would say first, but when I'm doing something, I think about the fiscal responsibility and to make sure that it's going to work in my favor, because
Yep.
that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, so I am launching my programs for my business, Global Local Gourmet, at the end of March. So people can look on Global Local Gourmet. They can look on Instagram at Global Local Gourmet, on Facebook, Global Local Gourmet, and you can follow me, Nadine Nelson, if you want to. but I will be posting there coming up what like my spring and my summer will look like. And so we have some special things like a goddess weekend. We have summer programs for kids that will be both virtual and in person, obviously with limited space. So yeah, I have a lot of things going on.
Awesome. So I'll make sure to just, wherever I post this, I'll list like your information, your contact information, websites, and links and things. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank
It's always a
you.
pleasure. Yeah, I'm just excited to help you spread the word about all these things coming down the pipe for you.
Yeah, so I would just say to people, like, go to either Instagram, We Stir the Pot, or on Facebook, it's Stir the Pot, and sign up and register. I don't know if I sent you the link. You can, it's on stirthepot.online.
Yeah.
Frankie or anyone else, you can register, and we are finalizing some really great guests, and we're trying to keep it kind of secret, but
Okay.
you
It looks a
you
little
will know.
cryptic, like looking at the
Like,
pages. I was wondering
yeah,
if
I know, like, like, because we want we want to build anticipation. We also want to build like goodwill and people understanding that it really doesn't matter who's on our programs. It really doesn't. Like, I mean, we had Nancy McDermott and you know um, Tanya Fields from the Feminist Black Project. And so, like, we've always had great local speakers from New Haven and, our first national program, like, great speakers. But it is about whoever we have is going to inspire you to hopefully do something for yourself. So we hope people don't come for the speakers only, like we hope people come for the work. That's
yeah.
what Stir the Pot is about. It's about doing work with the talents that you have and not being it about drudgery or like, but to be able to, if you're using your passions, then you can create change and showcasing people who are using their passions to create change. That's what we want.
Awesome. All right, Nadine, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and, share everything that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in. If you've tuned in, pay attention to wherever I'm posting this for links and things. And feel free to ask questions. You can reach out to Nadine, or if you happen to have some questions that I can ask Nadine for you, feel free to reach out to me as well. All right.
All right. Bye, Frankie.